Into this hour, we bring our hunger for awakening. We bring our thirst for connection. We bring our yearning for justice and a desire to serve a greater cause. Into this hour, we bring our courage to walk on after a hard loss. We bring our joy and gratitude for ordinary blessings. Let our gathering here touch our souls, and let us come away reassured and refreshed, reconnected and renewed. It is good to be together, even at a distance. Good morning to you all, and welcome to our service here on May 30th here at First Parish Church in Weston. I am Jeff Barz-Snell, the minister. We are glad you could take a few minutes to join us here on this last Sunday of May, even though it feels like the last Sunday in March, as it were. There's the old joke that this is a lovely day for outdoor play if you are a duck. Even so, with the weather inclement, we are glad that you could be with us. We work to keep these services timely, engaging, and hopeful, with a little bit of something for everybody. We continue to miss those opportunities to gather here in person to worship and give thanks, and to be reminded of our best selves and to come away renewed. Our service this day is an observance of sorts and a meditation on Memorial Day. I am joined by Chris and Jane Carlson, who will light our chalice for today. Our song leader and soloist is Mr. Ben Doyle. Our organist is Jeffrey Wheating, and our music director is Bill Sano. The service is produced today by Max Hall from a distance. Thank you, Max. And from Jacob Barz-Snell and others who are here in the control room running things this day. The hymn can be found in the order of service that was emailed out to all of you yesterday and is also posted on our website. Please rise up wherever you may be and feel free to sing or hum with me a few verses of "O Beautiful for Spacious Skies." Thank you, Ben. And I'd now like to call forward Chris and Jane Carlson to light our chalice for today.
As we light the chalice today on Memorial Day weekend, we remember and give thanks for the bravery, fortitude, and self-sacrifice of all those who fought in defense of our country during times of war and conflict. One of the principles of Unitarian Universalism is the goal of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. Sadly, we are far from such a world today, but it remains one of the highest of principles for which we must constantly strive. Ideally, of course, we must work to achieve these goals without conflict and its attendant trauma and anguish. But today, we honor all the men and women who fought to preserve and protect these high ideals for our country.
My grandfather fought in World War I, and my father fought in World War II. Fortunately, neither of them perished, but Memorial Day is a time for me to nonetheless give thanks for their noble service to our country, and also to give thanks for all the groundwork they and my other ancestors laid to enable me and my own family to live the way we do today. It is also time to reflect on the world we are creating for our own children and grandchildren, and the actions we are taking in our search for social justice, in our concern for the natural world, and in our attempts to better understand our fellow citizens and people around the world to ensure peace, liberty, and justice for all.
We now invite you to participate in a recent tradition here at First Parish Church, the virtual exchange of peace. Those of you who tune in on a regular basis know how this works. As I like to note, we have this remarkable technology in our pockets and on our desks, and we do all sorts of amazing things with these devices that previous generations would have thought unthinkable or impossible. But we rarely take these devices and use them simply to wish someone well. So take a moment and reach out to someone you know from First Parish or from your larger network of people via text, email, or phone. Send them a text, give them a quick call, shoot them an email, and simply say, "Good morning, happy Memorial Day, I wish you peace." Say you can't talk long right now, tell them you are participating in a worship service and wanted just to take a moment to wish them well, wish them health during this time when so many folks are having a challenging time. Our reading for this day comes from the Psalms. Hear now this ancient hymn whose music was lost centuries ago, thousands of years ago, but whose words are remembered to this very day. Psalm 34, verses 11 through 22. Come, O children, listen to me. I will teach you the fear of the Lord. Which of you desires life and covets many days to enjoy good? Keep your tongue from evil and your lips from speaking deceit. Depart from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. The face of the Lord is against evildoers, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. Many are the afflictions of the righteous, but the Lord rescues them from them all. He keeps all their bones, not one of them will be broken. Evil brings death to the wicked, and those who hate the righteous will be condemned. The Lord redeems the life of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. Here ends the reading.
And I will give to thee a crown of life. Be not afraid, be not afraid, my help is nigh. Be not afraid, be not afraid, my help is nigh. Be not afraid, my help is nigh. Be not afraid, be thou faithful unto death, and I will give to thee a crown of life. Be not afraid, my help is nigh. My help is nigh. Be not afraid, my help is nigh. Be thou faithful unto death.
Thank you, Ben and Jeff. So here in Weston, there is an unusual little park. It's about 1 block west of the center of town, if you will, at the intersection of Boston Post Road and Concord Road. This triangular piece of land is a little over an acre in size and is framed by stone walls on every side that give way to access by foot in the corners. I go by this little park almost every night with my dog on our evening walk. I have never seen anyone other than myself walk about in its grassy lawn and group of trees. Actually, last summer I saw a coyote in there one night. I was impressed because the coyote tried to hide from me instead of just running away. It tried to hide behind a tree as my dog barked incessantly. On the east side of the park, right at the corner of Boston Post Road and Concord Road, there is this small chest-high memorial. Last year, just before Memorial Day, I noticed that 4 small, fresh American flags had been planted there in the ground in front of the monument, which prompted me to step in and take a closer look. The memorial marker is faded limestone, but you can still make out the words that were etched into the stone decades and decades ago. To the town of Weston, for a park forever, from the descendants of Isaac and Augustus Fisk, in memory of 2nd Lieutenant Charles Henry Fisk III, United States Infantry, 1896 to 1918. He trained and served in many lands to find at last a grave in France. There's value in stopping to read plaques and memorials, especially this time of year. It turns out that Weston has its own Soldiers Field Park right off the town center, given in memory of a 22-year-old man who died of injuries during World War I. I became curious and wanted to know more about this Charles Henry Fisk III. Not only did I know his surname, but I was sure I'd seen his whole name listed elsewhere. And I realized a few months later that it is actually printed or listed on the plaque right here in this sanctuary, just opposite from where I'm standing presently. On the south side of the wall near the baptism font in the back of this sanctuary, there is a plaque. There is a plaque that lists all the men who from this congregation served during the Great War, as it was called in 1923. The war to end all wars, as it was thought of. There were 48 individuals whose names were included on that plaque. Names from families that we would recognize to this day. But by 2 of these names, there is a star pressed into the bronze, signifying those 2 local young men who died in service to their country, Philip Windsor and Charles Fisk III. Now, there were a total of 148 men who served during World War I from Weston, and 6 of them died in the line of duty, and 2 of those were members of this congregation. Windsor died of pneumonia at the age of 25, and I think I will share his story next year at this time. Charles Henry Fisk III was from the well-known family that owned and operated the Fisk Organ Company. He graduated from the Country Day School in 1914, and at his parents' urging, traveled abroad and studied for a time at Trinity College at Cambridge University in England. He had been admitted to the Harvard class of 1919. Before the war broke out, Fisk joined the American Field Service and worked as an ambulance driver in France and then the Balkans in 1917. He then enlisted in the U.S. Infantry's 77th Division in January of 1918 and sailed to Europe in April of that year as a sergeant, quickly then becoming a 2nd lieutenant. Charles Fisk III died at a Red Cross hospital in Paris on August 24th after being wounded in the shoulder during a battle near Fismes, Marne in France on August 12th. He's buried in the American Cemetery in Suresnes, just outside of Paris. Here in Massachusetts, his name is carved on the Great Stone Wall in Memorial Hall at Harvard University, and his family placed a memorial marker at their plot in Linwood Cemetery. In 1921, his family gave the town of Weston that small piece of land to be used as a park, as the stone says, forever. 10 years later, they built that small monument with the stone in 1931 and etched those words that are now slowly fading away. The older I get, and the more veterans that I meet or have met over the years, the more I am inclined to take the time to stop and pause in front of small monuments that often go unnoticed and overlooked. Here in a place like Weston, I think a good number of people take the time to remember those who have paid the ultimate price in service to this country, to remember those for whom the bell tolls, as Hemingway hauntingly put it after his own experiences during the Great War. On Memorial Day weekend, it's important to pause to remember and pay our respects when we can. And it's important not just because it is a reminder of the pain and sorrow embedded in every community and town around the country. It's important because it reminds us not to take our system of government and our civic values for granted. Lest we forget, in the larger history of the world, governments of the people and for the people and by the people have been the truly rare exception, not the norm. Democracies do not happen by accident. And the fact that we live in a country that has been governed more or less by democratic principles and laws for almost 245 years is nothing short of remarkable, even with all of our problems and all of our issues and all of our injustices. We live during a time and era when people are angry and people are frustrated by our history and by our present reality of these United States of America. There can be no doubt. On one hand, we have a growing movement of people who rightly point out that the cherished values and ideals of freedom enshrined in our Constitution did not, and to some extent still do not, fully extend to all of our citizens in this country. Our history can be viewed in one way as a slow extension in fits and starts, but nonetheless an extension of equal rights to all Americans. But it can also be seen as a long record of European Americans attempting to restrict the rights and restrict the freedoms for other people for the sake of maintaining a beneficial status quo. And yet, the expansion of rights continues. The dream of a nation in which all people are treated equally, continues to abide and stir. Understandably, some people are eager to speed up that transition to a truly democratic 21st century US of A. Some people believe it's high time that we tell the stories and the histories that many of us did not learn in school. Some people are inspired by their faith traditions and by the values that they hear articulated in our country's founding documents. They believe that this is a righteous and noble cause, and they take seriously declarations like we heard in that reading this morning from Psalm 34. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and his ears are open to their cry. The face of the Lord is against evildoers, to cut off the remembrance of them from the earth. When the righteous cry for help, the Lord hears and rescues them from all their troubles. The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit. If you come from a historically marginalized community, if you come from a place and a family that has known exploitation and duress, then words and declarations like this resonate deep within you. 2 weeks ago, it's interesting, 2 weeks ago I watched the amazing testimony of Mrs. Viola Fletcher from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Did any of you see this? Mrs. Viola Fletcher, is 107 years old. and remembers the Tulsa race riots that occurred in 1921. Most of us have never even heard of the Tulsa Massacre, as it was called, and we certainly never learned about it in our history classes. 100 years ago, Tulsa, Oklahoma had one of the largest and most prosperous African American communities in the Midwest. There was a section of that town that was called the Black Wall Street and hosted thousands of families and citizens and communities and businesses. And in the summer of 1921, a white mob descended on that section of town and literally razed acres of buildings and burned them to the ground. And just last year, researchers at the University of Oklahoma, archaeologists, found a mass grave on the outskirts of Tulsa with the bodies of hundreds of people who had gone missing that night. To listen to this 107-year-old woman testify in front of Congress and describe that terrifying night that she remembers as a young girl of 6 years old during the summer of 1921 was, to say the least, powerful. I will post a link of the video on our website. As I watched this 107-year-old woman testify in front of Congress, history was being reclaimed. Truth was being shared. Wounds and grievances were being aired. The potential for our nation to rise above our divisions was being increased. That is what we are here to do, after all. To live our lives in such a way that contributes to the well-being of our nation and doesn't take away from it. To live our lives in a way that furthers life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, that's one group we know is operating in our society, and that's one movement. But there are others. There are other movements that are active and growing in our country right now, as we all know. There are groups that feel like they have been disrespected and overlooked. There are groups of mainly white or European Americans who believe that our nation has taken a wrong turn, a wrong direction, and needs to find a way to somehow return to its past glory once again. Some of these people would describe themselves as evangelical Christians and conservative. Many of them live in more rural areas of this country and feel that their traditional values are being disparaged or dismissed by the mainly coastal elites who live in more urban areas. And a lot of these are decent people for the most part. However, over the last 5 years, millions of members of this group have gotten caught up in a series of conspiracy theories that have been widely circulated on social media and on places like YouTube. Groups like QAnon now influence the views of approximately 15% of the American public. Let me say that again. Groups like QAnon now influence, as best as can be determined, the views of approximately 15% of the American public, or 50 million Americans. There are literally millions of people, millions of our fellow citizens, who believe the ludicrous claims that Democratic leaders of the U.S. government are part of some sort of satanic conspiracy, and that Donald Trump was going to cleanse this nation of these supposed evildoers. Many of these people were publicly displaying their views on January 6th during the insurrection at the United States Capitol. Amidst the many Trump signs, amidst the many Dixie flags, there were people holding signs next to each other on the Capitol steps. The signs read, "Jesus saves," and right next to it there was another guy holding a big poster that said, and I'm not kidding, "Biden is a pedophile." I actually was watching both CNN and Fox News that afternoon and started writing down the messages I saw on these different signs, since I was both perplexed and horrified and fascinated all at the same time. January 6 was the first time that our nation's capital had been attacked since the War of 1812. And that's saying something. That didn't even happen during the Civil War. And this attack in January was instigated by a lie about our last election. We live during a time of great divides and polarization. We live during a time when social media and 21st century communication networks are not always reporting truths, but are sometimes spreading untruths and misinformation. Instead of bringing people together, they seek to push us apart and divide communities for the sake of for-profit social media companies, and sometimes for the sake or for the interests of foreign actors and governments. And amidst this time of polarization, there are movements being built literally on lies, with the largest being that the president won the election last fall. He did not. And when his election security advisor attested to the accuracy and the security of last November's election, the president promptly fired him. I highly recommend watching that interview with Christopher Krebs, the election advisor. Krebs was interviewed last November on 60 Minutes, just a few weeks after he was removed from his job. Now, why am I daring to hold up these tensions and issues on a holiday weekend like this one? I do so respectfully, because truth matters in a society like ours. Some common agreement about reality matters and allows civil society and democracy to operate. When our leaders engage in outright falsehoods, when they seek to undermine our democratic institutions, they do a disservice to our people. They are also, in my opinion, dishonoring those who have come before, those who have given their lives so that our 3 centuries old experiment in democracy can continue. I believe there are several crucial reasons that people are willing to risk their lives to defend our country, to preserve and defend their families and community, to protect the Enlightenment values on which this nation was founded, the values such as equal rights and the rule of law and objective truth, and to foster peace and stability with the hope and aspiration that maybe, just maybe, the next generation of Americans can get it right, that the next generation can form that more perfect union by responding to the challenges and urgencies of their time and their place, and not just advancing the interests of a privileged few. There is no such thing as a perfect family. And the same holds true for a town, for a city, for a state, for a nation, and for the world as a whole, for that matter. The founders of this country knew that. In fact, they assumed that there would always be competing factions of Americans debating and arguing about the direction that this country could and should take. And with this understanding, with this assumption, they set up a system of government with checks and balances that requires that people with different points of view engage one another and find common ground over and over and over again, and to do so respectfully and peacefully and through the democratic process. The historian John Meacham makes this very point in his Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Soul of America. He writes, "There was a genius about the founding, the American founding, and the emergence of an American democratic politics. That genius lay in no small part in the recognition that the Republic was susceptible to human passions and human beings themselves. The founders expected seasons of anger and frustrations. They anticipated hours of unhappiness and unrest. But as Meacham points out, our Constitution and politics have endured and prevailed, vindicating the founders' vision of a country that would require amendment and adjustment, that the nation was constructed with an awareness of sin and the means to take account of societal changes, has enabled us as the United States to rise above the furies of given moments and given ages. For me, this awareness of our flaws and this respect of our process of debate and dialogue is the story of our nation. It's part of the ongoing aspiration of forming that more perfect union. None of us are here to be right. None of us are here to be right. But rather, all of us are here to try to get it right, to try to live out some common solution to the challenges that we all face. That's the opportunity. That's the potential in our lives, in our communities, in our nation, and in our world. And this, believe it or not, these ideas are things that I think about quite often as I walk by Charles Fisk's Soldiers Field Park almost every single night. I am grateful there have been Americans who have gone before and who have defended this community and protected our way of life and ensured this opportunity for me, for you, and for all of us who hold democracy dear. Truth matters. Service matters. And fostering a greater, more durable peace matters. Amen, and happy Memorial Day. Wherever you find yourself right now, I invite you to sit up a little bit more straight, or stand up if you wish. Take a breath in. Join with me in this brief moment of prayer. Gracious God, send the gift of your Spirit to fill our hearts and our minds in this world. Touch us with truth, O Lord, that burns like fire, with beauty that moves us like the wind. And on this Memorial Day weekend, set us free, O God. Free to try new ways of living. Free to forgive ourselves and others. Free to love and laugh and sing. Free to lay aside our burdens of security. Free to join the battle for justice and peace. Free to listen and wonder again. And free to remember those who have gone before and for whom the bell tolls. May we never forget their lives and their service. And now, as is your tradition and inclination, I invite you to join with me the way Jesus taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, even as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. As has become abundantly clear, the pandemic did not shut this congregation down, but rather changed how we worked and how we reached out. It forced us to innovate and consider different ways of making a difference. As we listen to our virtual choral anthem, we invite you to consider a gift of support to First Parish Church in Weston. You can mail in a check to our church office. You can set up a donation using your online banking platform, or you can use our PayPal account. The information for doing that can be found by clicking on the donate button on the top of our website. Regardless of the option you choose, we thank you, the members and the friends of this congregation, for supporting our church's voice and presence and mission. As I like to say, what we do here matters, and it's worthy of our support. Thank you for joining us today. We invite you to check out our upcoming gatherings and programs, including our fellowship hour, which will begin on Zoom at 11:30 a.m. This week, we will host our regular programs, including Knitters and Stitchers, I think this Monday, and our Wednesday morning meditation program at 8:30 a.m. I also want to note that our senior men's lunch will happen on Zoom at noon this coming Tuesday, June 1st. Next Thursday, June 3rd, our congregation is co-sponsoring an online Zoom program dealing with the local issue of drinking water contamination. Last Monday, the Boston Globe had a startling article about the growing number of cities and towns in New England that are finding alarming levels of synthetic chemicals, PFAS, in their drinking water. PFAS are a family of synthetic compounds used in stain-resistant furniture and clothing, and even in microwave popcorn bags, believe it or not. And they do not break down in the environment. So the program on Thursday night is organized by the Metro West Climate Solutions Group and will feature experts from Clean Water Action and the Silent Spring Institute located in Newton. For more information or to register, go to metrowestclimatesolutions.org. Next Sunday, we hope and pray to be back outside on June 6th for our annual picnic. The service will be a celebration of our community and will feature a live outdoor performance of our own choir, something that has not occurred for over 15 months. We actually have a great schedule of events for June, including a movie night on June 11th, a celebration of Pride on June 13th, and an interfaith flower communion, and a Sunday, an ice cream fellowship hour on June 20th. See the upcoming e-posts for details. Finally, I just want to note that tomorrow morning, I will be participating in the town of Weston's observance for Memorial Day. We will meet outside or inside at Town Hall starting at 9:15 a.m. And the observance will last, I think, 45 to 50 minutes with a moment of silence and taps being played. There are links to all of our online and in-person programs in the e-newsletter that was sent out yesterday and on the calendar page of our website. We continue to find and discover many ways that we can participate as a community, both here in person and when we are apart. I continue to be gratified to see so many of you stepping up with your energy and your creativity and your suggestions. That's what churches like ours do. Thank you for joining us today. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord keep all those whom you love, whether here and some other place. May God be your companion and you be God's friend as you walk together through all the days of your life. And at the journey's end, may you find the welcome of God's love. It keeps us